every show. I'm the dad that encouraged her and continues to encourage her and into being independent. And of all the children, I'd say she's probably my closest knockoff, but um, she's not afraid. You know, her math skills, admittedly, are a difficulty for her. But I mean, I don't mean that terribly, but
Just not her strength.
it's not her strength.
Yeah.
It's not the strength I had anyway. But she has other skills that are beyond mine to the nth degree, and uh, and she does have that. I think the same. I don't know if she's ever put it into words, but I think she has the opinion that she can do anything. And um, my younger son uh, just took an entrepreneurial job, actually with a company that was failing here in the U.S. and is has got equity and is going to, make the effort, turn it around, and a little bit like I did at a younger age. And his goal is to hopefully be profitable enough that he can take that and then turn it into deals that he does completely, somewhat like I do. And my older son is a was a Marine, then a registered nurse, and still a registered nurse, and works at that, but also is trying to be an entrepreneur in woodworking, and does fabulous work, unbelievably beautiful art, really. Not so. We'll see. I mean, they're all trying, and they're all confident in themselves in some way, shape, or form.
Well, it's interesting because I'm sure during their upbringing, this was not all sunshine and rainbows. Because if you're going through the different, I mean, there had to be some struggles, I would think, on the family side, just from time, maybe even financially, was there that they
Oh,
deal
sure.
with? So they saw all that, but then so you
The
come out of it.
the the story that I always give is that um, when my oldest children went off to school, um, they got everything I had. My checkbook was empty. If they needed a car, I did what I could and uh, paid for half of their school, and I made them work. I didn't want it to be free. Um, and when my youngest children went to school, they had nice cars and much nicer. Life had changed a lot over 10, 12 years. And the oldest one said, I didn't get a almost new car. You sent me off with that piece of junk. And I'm like, well, let me give you an analogy here. When you went to college, I emptied my checkbook and my pockets. I didn't have anything left. When the youngest went to school, it was pocket change. And so tell me who I loved more.
That was well played.
Actually, I think there's something in the Bible about that, almost very similar. I couldn't tell you where to go, but it stopped a lot of conversation. But it's true. I mean, you give everything to one, and the next one, and well, that side of you is at least indifferent, kind of. So, yes, they've all been. But what they all learned when I was first becoming independent. Actually, I left out the very first thing I did was I bought a commercial building that was in a deteriorated shape. I did that while I was running the industrial gas business, and I remodeled it. I did it myself. I plumbed it. I hung drop ceilings. I put up walls. I tore down walls. I did everything. I did hire some help, but I also had some free help, and that was all the kids. And when things needed cleaned up, when carpet needed pulled, when sheetrock needed to be put up, and I needed help, they came down and they worked weekends and they worked nights. And it's kind of funny. All you think you're teaching them is how to complain, because their friends were out playing, and why do we have to work on Saturdays?
So that's where Tamara got the birth for her whole thing of remodeling and redoing. You from that stage in life, huh?
Exactly. They all left home, got out of college. Not all of them, three of them, I think, bought older homes. And first thing they did was, "Hey, Dad, going to help me. And so that's where I learned to hate 3-story homes, because my son bought one that was just trashed, and we had to rebuild it from top to bottom. And by the time I got done walking up and down those stairs, I didn't ever care for another set of stairs. But no, they learned, and they learned how to do it, and actually didn't call me. I mean, they knew what they needed to do. They just needed another hand, and I gave it, and willingly loved to do it.
So, the past, about a year or so, I redid the whole main part of my house. And I had my son with me the whole time, helping me, running around, doing things, even if it was just grunt work, like tearing out tiles on the floor. Mm-hmm. But now, today, this is a year and a half later, he's so much more confident in doing those things. And I didn't hire it out. We did it in-house. Saved ourselves tens of thousands of dollars, which you had to do also, right? Mm-hmm. But there's also that I can do this. Why would I want somebody else to do something that I can do?
Exactly. I think being on the farm, and as a boy, being out on a tractor all by myself, if something broke, I was out there by myself. I had to fix it. I had to figure out what happened. And if I could, I mean, some things you couldn't, but that gives you a sense of independence, and that I can make some decisions, and even if they're relatively minor in this scheme of things, maybe that's where you learn to be independent.
Yeah. So we've got through this phase where you've bought these failing companies, or you've taken over these failing companies. You went through that process. What happens after that in your life? Because there was a shift in what you focused on then, right?
Mm-hmm. The real estate building I mentioned that the kids had to work in, and I even gave them the cleaning contract after I had it rented out, and would get a bid, and I'd pay them the same thing, but every day after school they had to go clean it. Anyway, that same business, that same building, actually made me enough money annually that I could live, paid all my bills. And it allowed me to make and build other relationships. The building had been owned by a group of orthopedic surgeons. And Dr. Milo Slow, who became one of my best friends in life and mentor, I walked in, the sign had been up for a year. I walked in one day and I said, I would like to speak to someone about buying your building. Well, they'd been trying to sell it for a long time, and they were moving out. They were moving into a building at the local hospital. And so he immediately stopped seeing patients and brought me back into his office. And he was the nicest guy. I mean, I walked in probably 35 years old, intimidated. I'm going to see an orthopedic surgeon, and I'm going to talk business to him, and he's probably going to know 10 times more than I did. Well, he knew plenty, but he didn't actually know a lot more than I did. And my offer to him, he gave me all the details, and a few days later I gave him an offer, and they rejected it. And 2 weeks later they came back, or a week later, I don't remember how long, and said, well, we haven't had another single offer in whatever it's been, a year, 18 months. We're going to take your deal. And I said, okay. I said, here's what I want to do. So you got to have some gumption to do some of these things. And so I went to him and I said, I want a contract that allows me to buy the building if I have it leased. And I have a company that wants to lease it. And we signed all the agreements. And I had found out that the IRS the Internal Revenue Service needed a new building. And I went to them and I said, I have this building that's under contract. Here's the contract. And I own it if you give me the lease. And they were kind of like, well, we've never done that before, but maybe we could do that. And sure as heck, we did it. And they took a third of the building and paid for the whole thing. And over the next 2 years, and I didn't put any money down. And after I went, so the doctors wanted to know, Dr. Slow wanted to know what was I going to do with the building. And I told him. He said, "Oh my gosh, that's fantastic." He says, "I want to buy a third of it." And his brother-in-law was an orthopedic surgeon in the practice. The two of them bought a third back of it. It gave me all the money I needed to remodel the whole building. And so I did that. We became great friends, all of us, and his brother-in-law and him. And literally on a Friday night over cocktails at the country club, he said, "We've been trying forever to build a surgery center." Now, this was 30 years ago, and there weren't any surgery centers in the U.S. There was maybe a handful nationwide, literally no more than 5. And I said, "Well, what is it?" And he told me, and I said, "Well, Mike, by that point in time, I'd ran trucking, I'd done food distribution, I'd done the fire extinguisher, industrial gases, whatever." I said, I'm not afraid of that. I think I could do that." And he said, "If you can put together a plan, I'll get every surgeon in town of every specialty," there was 34 of them, "to come to a meeting." And 2 weeks later, I said, "I think I have a plan and I'm ready to make a presentation." To a man, every doctor walked in that night at the local club and said, "We think this is a joke and we're not going to invest any money, but we just came to hear what you had to say." By the time they were leaving, they were each writing me a check. And I raised $8 million that night. And never had seen so much, so inexperienced and so unprepared for that. I put it all into my own checking account.
And you've never looked back since.
and so the stragglers that, I'm sorry, what were you going to say, Tim?
I just say it's a good thing you were friends with the IRS.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. If you're a landlord to them, they can't audit you.
Right.
Oh,
that's a real thing? I didn't know.
Oh,
And
I'm buying some land.
Yeah.
I'm putting the IRS in.
At least the region that you're in can't audit you. So somebody from California would have to come out. Well, they aren't going to do that. So it was not that I needed it, because I wasn't doing anything wrong, but I was just ignorant. And so the straggling doctors, the young doctors just moved to town that didn't have, weren't doing great yet. They would bring me their check or call me and say, "Hey, we're bringing our investment over." And I said, "Well, could you meet me at the airport? I'm going to Mexico." And that's just some of them that didn't go over so well. But I was pretty confident at that point, probably too confident. And but anyway, they gave me their money. And a real success story in that the local hospital was against us, tried everything they could to stop us. And at the very last minute, before we were ready to break ground, they decided to buy in, and we got all of our money back from their portion of buying 50% of the hospital, because we had an appraisal. So everybody had very little money left in it. And last year we did over 10,000 procedures, and I'm still an owner and still on the board, and it's doing fantastic.
So that's interesting. The hospital came against you, and you were a representation of all the local surgeons. Mm-hmm. So the hospital's taking a stand against their probably employees at the time?
No, at that time, all the doctors were independent.
Okay.
The employment of doctors has been a more recent development, where hospitals are trying to control medicine.
They sure do, don't they?
They try, and where you and also, this goes along with the whole conversation we're having, is that an awful lot of doctors are coming out of school and not wanting to be independent. They're wanting a guaranteed check. They want to work 8 to 5. They don't want to be on call any more than they have to be, that sort of thing. So you're not seeing as many independent physicians as you used to, but that's changing, I think, too. I think the pendulum is swinging, because there's many of them that dislike the idea of working for somebody else.
So you go from opening this surgery center to today you're involved in a number of hospitals through the Midwest, kind of a line, I think goes from